The car slowed to a stop in front of the hotel, tires crunching against the driveway. I exhaled, straightened my cuffs, and stepped out, the weight of expectation already pressing against my shoulders. "Welcome, sir." "Madam," the chauffeur greeted with a bow, ushering us through the gold-trimmed entrance toward the private dining hall my sister had reserved. Beside me, Yura, my wife, slipped her hand through my arm. Her touch was light, practiced, the way she always grounded me in these family settings. "Ready?" she murmured, her voice carrying that hint of humor she always used to disarm me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, managing a smile. We had been married 2 years. Arranged, of course. 2 families solidifying an alliance that had been brewing for decades. Everyone expected icy formality, distant civility. Instead, Yura became my closest friend. We were both trapped into a loveless marriage, so we decided to not make it a living hell. We had an arrangement, open, honest, without illusions of romance. She had her world, I had mine, and somewhere in the middle, we met as equals. "Don't look so grim," she teased, adjusting the collar of my suit. "It's just dinner, not a merger." I chuckled under my breath. With my sister, everything is a merger. My sister had invited us for a family dinner, saying she had a big announcement to make. The chauffeur slid open the door to the private booth, and the low hum of conversation greeted us. My parents sat at the round table, father straight-backed, already half browsing a report on his phone. Mother smiling warmly, her pearls catching the light. "Jaehyun, Yura," Mother said, beckoning us closer. "Finally, come, sit." We greeted them, exchanged polite bows, the usual niceties. My father barely looked up before asking, "How are the quarterly reports?" I suppressed a sigh. "Steady. Revenue from the hospitality division is up by 4%. The new resort in Jeju is exceeding projections." Father nodded once, as if I'd only confirmed what he already knew. That was my life, a constant ledger of expectations and responsibilities. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I saw not numbers, but a single night. A night of heat and silence, and a face that haunted me every time my chest ached too much. Mother glanced around. "Where is your sister?" I almost laughed. Sujin thrived on entrances. As the head of PR and communications, she was the carefully curated face of our empire. Galas, charity balls, launches, she sparkled at all of them. Drama was her oxygen. She wouldn't walk into a room unless she was certain all eyes would follow. As if summoned, the door opened. Sujin breezed in, late as always, lips painted, her heels clicking against marble like punctuation marks. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, sliding into the empty chair with a smile sharp enough to cut. Mother waved it off. "We're just starting." Sujin leaned forward, eyes glittering. "Good, because I have news. Important news." Father arched a brow. "Another campaign? Bigger." She clasped her hands in mock suspense. "I'm getting married." Mother gasped, covering her mouth with delight. Father set his phone down at last. "Congratulations," he said, his approval measured but genuine. "Who is the man? From which family?" Sujin's smile curled slyly. "Oh, don't worry about the family. He's accomplished in his own right. He owns Atelier Luna." Sujin's gaze flicked toward the door. "Ah, speak of the devil. There he is." I turned. The room slowed, the chatter dulled, and my world, the carefully arranged scaffolding of duty, marriage, family, empire, tilted dangerously. Because walking toward us, his calm gaze steady, was the man I had loved, the man I had given up, the love of my life, Jaehyun. My throat went dry, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. He hadn't changed. Still the same composed expression, the quiet fire in his eyes. The same man whose skin I'd traced with trembling hands the night before my wedding, whispering "I love you" against lips I thought I'd never taste again. And now he was smiling politely, bowing in greeting as my sister's fiancé. Hey Daydreamers, thanks for tuning in. If you are liking this story so far, tell us where you are listening from in the comment section and hit the subscribe and notification button so you don't miss any story uploads. Let's continue. "Everyone," Sujin said smoothly, "this is Jaehyun, my fiancé." Jaehyun bowed politely, his voice calm and even. "It's an honor to finally meet you all." Mother's face brightened. "Ah, such a handsome young man." Father gave him a measured nod, the kind he reserved for men he was already evaluating as assets. "And this," Sujin gestured lightly, "is my brother Jaehyun and his wife Yura." For a second, Jaehyun's eyes found mine. Then, with a smile that nearly buckled me in my chair, he said softly, "Nice to see you again." My throat tightened. I forced the polite nod, while inside, my heart was a drum breaking through my ribs. We all sat, the waiter serving wine and dishes with rehearsed grace. Conversation soon picked up, my mother leaning forward eagerly. "So Jaehyun, how long have you two known each other?" Sujin smiled, perfectly in control. "For a while now. In fact, Jaehyun and my brother used to be friends." The air shifted. Father raised a brow. Mother blinked in mild surprise. "Really?" "Yes," Jaehyun said evenly, his gaze flicking toward me before settling back on them. "We were old friends. Old friends." The words sat like stones in my chest. We dated for 3 years. 3 years of love and intimacy, of late-night walks and whispered promises. Our relationship wasn't actually a secret. It just wasn't acknowledged. Because in this family, who I loved was never going to matter. They knew I had someone back then. They simply didn't care. So there was never a chance to introduce him to my family, well, except my sister, but Sujin knew. She had seen the photos I dared to keep, listened to my fears when I was terrified of choosing him. She was the one who told me to follow my heart, even if it meant standing against our parents. She was the one who held me the night I said goodbye to him for duty's sake. So why him? Why now? My head spun, but Sujin's voice cut through, lilting and confident. It's funny how life works, isn't it? Yura, ever-perceptive, tilted her head. JNC, isn't Atelier Luna the gallery we're working with for the Cheongdam Cultural Arts Festival? Jaehyun inclined his head. Yes, it's been my life's work. And your sister didn't tell you? Yura turned to me with a small frown. I blinked. No, this is the first I've heard of it. Sujin waved a hand. Oh, Oppa, don't be dramatic. The contracts aren't finalized. It'll cross your desk soon enough, but why wait for paperwork when I could introduce you to my fiancé in person? She laughed lightly, and my parents chuckled with her, as though this was all natural, all perfect. But across the table, Jaehyun's calm face never broke. And the more I look at him, the more I notice the difference in his features. Gone were the highlights in his hair, and the piercing also. What happened to him? The rest of the dinner blurred. The wedding dates being discussed, my parents congratulating, Sujin outlining plans with practiced precision. After the festival is completed, we'll hold the wedding. Timing is everything, after all. Plates were cleared, wine glasses emptied, and still I couldn't shake the pounding in my chest. The car ride home was quiet. City lights smeared across the windows, and Yura's hand rested lightly on my arm. You've been quiet, she said softly. I'm fine, I replied automatically. She studied me. Then, with that gentle strength of hers, she said, You don't have to be. You know you can tell me anything, right? I turned to look at her. This woman who was my wife, but also my friend, my ally. She didn't push, she never did. She simply held space for me, and somehow that made the silence easier to bear. I know, I murmured, thank you. When we got home, I retreated to my room. My wife and I had separate spaces, and collapsed onto the bed, the dinner replaying in my head on an endless loop. And then, like an old wound reopening, I was back there. 2 years ago, the night before my wedding. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles burned, the road blurring under headlights. I shouldn't have gone. I knew that. But my heart had dragged me, reckless and desperate, to his apartment. When he opened the door, barefoot, hair tousled, eyes tired but soft, I almost broke down right there. Jaehyun, he said quietly. I stepped inside. I needed to see you, I whispered. Jaehyun searched my face, his voice steady as always. Tomorrow's your wedding. I know. My throat burned. And I can't. Jaehyun, I can't do this without. He silenced me with a hand gently placed against my cheek, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, and pulled me into a kiss. And I kissed him back, desperately fusing our bodies. That night we didn't speak much. Words would have broken us. Instead, I memorized him. The warmth of his skin, the way his breath caught, the quiet strength in the way he held me like he knew it was the last time. And when I woke up in the morning, it was to an empty bed and an empty house. His things were gone. His phone disconnected. Jaehyun had vanished. All attempts to reach out to him after that had proved abortive. And now he was back. As my sister's fiancés. God, this is all shades of messed up. I buried my face into my pillow, the weight of it all pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. What do I do now? I needed answers. I'd barely slept since the dinner, tossing between fragments of Jaehyun's calm smile and my sister's triumphant smirk. My chest felt like someone had stacked bricks on it. So when morning came, I did the only thing that made sense. I called her. She didn't pick up. Instead, a message blinked back at me. Busy. We'll call you later. That was it. No explanation. If I knew my sister very well, she was hiding from me. I let the phone fall to my desk as my eyes darted to a small painting just beside my bed. A painting of me with a signature at the edge, Jaehyun. My mind slipped back to the first time I saw him. I had just taken over father's seat at Hanwoo Group. The pressure was immediate, crushing. For weeks I was shuttled across time zones. China, Thailand, Seoul, arguing in boardrooms, bowing at banquets, swallowing words I didn't mean. I could barely breathe. One evening, when the weight pressed so heavily I thought my chest might split, my sister suggested I take a drive. Clear your head, Sujina. I'll cover things for a while. Just breathe. I didn't hesitate. I dismissed my driver and let the road swallow me. For an hour, I drove with the windows down, the night wind clawing at my hair, the city falling away behind me. And then, around a bend, I saw it. A market fair. Bright paper lanterns strung across narrow streets, food stalls spilling smoke and laughter into the air. I don't know why I stopped, maybe because it looked so alive. Maybe because I wanted to remember what alive felt like. I wandered aimlessly, a stranger in my own skin, until I saw it. A painting. Bold strokes, all color and motion, a woman's face tilted to the sky as if she was drinking sunlight. The canvas pulsed with something I couldn't name. Freedom. Do you like it? The voice pulled me sideways. I turned to look at the person who just spoke, and the sight that hit me was something I had described as woe back then. He was dressed in a simple black t-shirt and worn-out jeans. Black curls brushed his temples, the tips glinting with a faint blue tint. A small stud gleamed on his left ear. His shirt was splattered with flecks of paint, his fingers stained in hues of red and cobalt. He looked like he'd been born out of color itself. And when he smiled, God, when he smiled, it was like he knew something the rest of the world had forgotten. I made it yesterday, he said, nodding at the painting. I thought, why not let it breathe tonight? His ease disarmed me. I was used to boardrooms, to rehearsed voices and guarded eyes. He was the opposite. unapologetically himself, and at that moment he felt so free, I was jealous more. "Do you want me to draw you?" he asked suddenly, tilting his head, curls shifting. I almost laughed. "Draw me?" "Yeah," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You've got this look, like you're holding your breath even when you don't have to. I kind of want to capture that." For reasons I still can't explain, I said yes. I sat there in the middle of a buzzing market fair while this stranger sketched me onto paper like it mattered. His hand moved fast, sure, his eyes flicking between me and the page, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. When he finished, he handed me the portrait, a version of me I almost didn't recognize, more open, less rigid, a man with shadows but also with light. "How much?" I asked. "It's free." "Free?" "Yeah," he shrugged, lips quirking. "But if you really want to pay me back, buy me a drink sometime." I stared. He grinned. Then he held out a small card scrawled with his number. "Call me when you feel like it." And then he turned back to his canvas, as if I hadn't just walked into his orbit and lost gravity. For days after that evening at the fair, I couldn't get him out of my head. The painting. The way his laughter seemed to ripple even after he stopped. The way he looked at me like he could see something past the shell I'd built for myself. So, by the time the weekend rolled around, I caved. I pulled out the card he'd slipped me, his number written in quick, slanted strokes, and dialed. He picked up on the second ring. I quickly introduced myself after he said hello. "Sujin C." His voice was bright, too bright for morning. "You actually called." The way he said it, like I'd done him a favor, made my chest squeeze. "I said I'd buy you a drink," I replied, trying to sound even. "Well," he said, laughing softly, "how about coffee instead? I don't trust myself to stay charming after alcohol. Meet me at Cafe Maru, 3 o'clock. And when we had met that day, he talked more than I did. I sat across from him at that tiny cafe, the air smelling of roasted beans and honeyed pastries, and listened. He told me about growing up by the sea, how he used to sketch the waves until his hands cramped, about his love for street fairs, how people let their guards down there more than anywhere else. He spoke with his hands, with his whole face, his curls bouncing as he leaned forward. Sometimes he'd trail off mid-sentence because an idea caught him, and he'd scribble it on a napkin with the pen he always carried in his pocket. I didn't say much, but I memorized him. The way he wrinkled his nose before laughing, how he always tapped his cup twice before taking a sip, how he made ordinary things sound extraordinary, like he was letting me borrow his eyes for a while. When we finally left the cafe, I felt lighter, like I had just walked out of a therapy session. I bade him goodbye and entered into the back seat of my car, nodding at the driver to start the engine. But before we could move, a knock rapped against the glass. "Jaehyun?" I lowered the window, and he leaned down, grinning. His curls fell forward, his eyes glinting mischievously. "Oh, one more thing," he said. Before I could ask what, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to mine, soft, quick, unapologetic. When he pulled back, his smile widened. "I hope that's okay." I sat dazed, the faint taste of coffee and sugar lingering on my mouth. "Okay." He laughed, waved as he backed away, and called out, "See you, hopefully." And just like that, he was gone. And that was how it started. An encounter that ignited the next 3 years of my life. The best 3 years of my life. One I had to give us due to duty to the family. I dropped the portrait he'd sketched of me that first night. My fingers traced the lines, the version of me he'd seen, one I barely recognized anymore. I set it down carefully, as though it were fragile glass, and forced myself up. Work awaited. Meetings, expectations, the same old suffocating weight. But this time, it came with the knowledge that Jaehyun was back as my sister's fiancé. When I arrived at the office that morning, I buried myself in routine. It was the only way to keep from thinking. Numbers, reports, emails, I dove into them headfirst, as if they could erase the image of Jaehyun's smile from my mind. Director Han, my secretary, called as I stepped into my office, already stacking a thin file into my hands. "Here's today's schedule. You have back-to-back meetings until lunch, then a review presentation for the Cheongdam Cultural Arts Festival partnership at 3. I paused mid-step. "Festival partnership?" "Yes, sir. It was requested by Director Han Sujin," she replied carefully, glancing at me as if to check for a reaction. "My sister." Of course. I nodded once, dismissing her, but when I sat behind my desk, I unlocked my phone. My message thread with Sujin was still unanswered. 3 unread texts from me in the last 24 hours. "Can we talk? Call me back. I need answers." All ignored. Instead, her one brief reply blinked back at me. "Busy. We'll get back to you." My hand tightened around the phone. If this meeting was about the festival collaboration, then Jaehyun would be there. My chest burned at the thought. Half anticipation, half dread. I pushed the phone aside and forced myself to focus on the numbers in front of me. But the words blurred, shifting into memories. His voice, his touch, the way he laughed. I exhaled hard and scrubbed a hand over my face. Work. I needed to keep this about work. By the time 3 o'clock rolled around, I was as ready as I would ever be. Or so I thought. The conference room was filled with department heads and managers. Papers shuffled, laptops glowed, the usual hum of pre-meeting chatter. Then the door opened. My sister swept in first, perfectly composed, the embodiment of charm. She had the gift of dramatic timing, always making an entrance like the room had been waiting just for her. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice smooth and bright. Today we'll be reviewing our collaboration proposal with the Cheongdam Arts Foundation. And then Jaehyun followed. I felt it immediately, the shift in the air, the way my pulse stumbled against my ribs. He was different. Or rather, changed. His curls were neatly trimmed, black and sleek without the streak of blue that had once crowned them. No glint of the silver stud he used to wear in his ear. He looked respectable, polished, the kind of man who fit into boardrooms and business deals. But that wasn't the Jaehyun I knew. The Jaehyun I knew dyed his hair every other month, just to annoy critics. He once joked that if people couldn't handle the colors, they didn't deserve his art. He had loved his freedom, worn it like a badge. Why had he given that up? Mr. Han, Jaehyun said, bowing politely before taking his seat. His voice was calm, his eyes unreadable. Not Yujin. Not the man he'd kissed with laughter in his throat and paint still staining his hands. Just Mr. Han. The title sliced deeper than I expected. But what was I expecting? I had chosen my duty over him. This is what I get. But I was burning to know what had happened to him. The meeting unfolded around me like any other. Yura charmed the executives, highlighting PR angles. The finance team raised concerns about budget allocations. And Jaehyun spoke with measured authority, laying out plans for artist showcases, cultural impact, community reach. His tone was professional, clipped, almost cold. But now and then, when he looked my way, something flickered beneath the surface. Something only I could see. Still, he never slipped. He never called me Sujin, not once. And I barely heard half of what was said. My mind kept snagging on the absence of his highlights, the missing stud, the way he had folded himself into this version that didn't belong to him. Or maybe it did now, and I was the one holding onto a ghost. The meeting closed with nods and handshakes. "We'll circulate the finalized proposal tonight," Yura announced, flashing me that practiced smile. I know my brother will be thorough in his review. I opened my mouth, maybe to challenge her, maybe to ask Jaehyun something, anything, but she cut me off, linking her arm through his like she had at the dinner. "Come on, fiancé," she said lightly, turning them both toward the door. "We're due at another appointment." Jaehyun gave a polite bow to the room, his gaze skimming over me once, unreadable, before disappearing at her side. And just like that, I was left in the silence of the boardroom. The afternoon dragged on in endless signatures and quick exchanges with my secretary, but I could barely remember a word. My focus flickered in and out, always snapping back to that smile from the dinner table, the calm way Jaehyun had said, "Nice to see you again." Like it was nothing. "CEO Han," his secretary called from the door, holding a slim folder. "Director Han requested we bring this for your final review. She said it's urgent." Jaehyun waved him in, flipping the folder open. The documents inside were familiar. Layout drafts, timelines, budget proposals for the Cheongdam Art Collaboration Project, my sister's pet project. I skimmed the first page, irritation curling at the edges of his exhaustion. She hadn't answered a single one of his texts. Yet, here she was, still pulling strings. Before I could say anything, the door opened again. Yura breezed in, her perfume arriving a beat ahead of her. "I thought I'd save you from reading in solitude," she said, smiling that perfect PR smile. Behind her, carrying a second stack of documents, was Jaehyun. My pulse stuttered as I forced my expression into neutrality, shifting my gaze back to the papers in front of me. Yura, oblivious, or pretending to be, placed a hand on my shoulder. "Jaehyun prepared the latest revisions. You'll find them clean and elegant, just like his work always is," she said, then checked her watch. "Unfortunately, I have a call with the press in 10 minutes. I'll leave him here to walk you through the details." I started to say, but she was already halfway to the door, waving cheerfully. And then, we were alone. The silence hummed in the office, filled only by the soft thud of papers as Jaehyun set them neatly on the table. He straightened, smoothed the edge of his sleeve, and finally met my eyes. "CEO Han," he said, voice calm, professional. "These are the revised layouts for the gallery installation." My throat tightened. "So that's it? Just CEO Han now?" The bitterness slipped out before he could catch it. Jaehyun's gaze didn't waver, though something flickered in the depths. "It's your title, isn't it?" "That's not what you used to call me." He paused for a while, but enough to thicken the air. Then Jaehyun gave a small, one that reached nowhere near his eyes. "That was a long time ago." He leaned back in his chair, forcing a dry laugh. 2 years. You make it sound like decades." Jaehyun didn't answer. He simply flipped the folder open and began outlining the revisions. Wall placements, lighting adjustments, sponsorship allocations. His tone was smooth, steady, betraying nothing. And that composure, it gnawed at me. I wasn't sure what I expected. Anger? Accusation? A single sharp word to prove Jaehyun had felt the same ache these 2 years had carved into him? Instead, all I got was cool efficiency. "My sister, huh? How on earth did that even happen?" I asked the question I have been meaning to since that night at the dinner. He blinked, then forced a smile. "It wasn't planned. We met at an exhibition. Talked a few times. It just happened." "It just happened?" I echoed, my chest tight. "Yes." His tone sharpened, like he needed me to believe it. "Not everything is a conspiracy, Sujin. Sometimes people meet and connect, that's all." "Never thought you'd swing that," was Jaehyun. "People change, Sujin." "People change, huh?" I said quietly, half to myself. Jaehyun glanced up. For the briefest second, his mask slipped, just a flicker of something old, something raw. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "People adapt," he corrected softly. Then he closed the folder. That's all for today. If you need clarification, you can reach me through your sister. I wanted to stop him, to demand answers, to say, don't you dare walk out like you did that morning, but my tongue stayed heavy. Jaehyun gave a polite nod and turned for the door. And though his steps were measured, composed, but I caught it again, that half-second hesitation before the handle turned, as if he'd almost looked back. Then the door shut, leaving me staring at the empty chair, his chest echoing with everything unsaid. I never had the chance to speak to Jaehyun after that meeting. He had made it clear that the past was already the past. So I let it sit for a while. Perhaps any little chance we've got to be in the same space, it was always for meetings, revisions, press briefings. The Cheongdam art collaboration project was moving ahead like a train I couldn't stop, with Sujin perfectly positioned at the front, smiling for cameras and charming investors. Jaehyun was as professional as they come. He never lingered on me. Not once. It was as if I wasn't even in the room. And the more he looked past me, the harder it became to breathe. Then came the family dinner. It was a ritual in my family to have dinner at least once in a month at my parents' house. Everywhere was already buzzing when I arrived with my wife. The long table was already set, glasses catching the light, dishes steaming with my mother's favorite selections. My father was at the head, already talking about shareholder reports. My mother fussed over the gala press coverage. Sujin sat opposite me, glowing, with Jaehyun at her side like a trophy she'd polished just for tonight. My wife sat next to me, calm, collected, her hand brushing mine once in greeting before retreating back to her wine glass. It was fine. Everything was going fine. Until halfway through the meal, Sujin reached for the platter of shrimp and turned to Jaehyun with that rehearsed smile. Here, babe. You should try these. They're imported fresh. You'll love them. I froze. My chopstick stopped midair. Jaehyun's voice was steady when he answered. No, thank you. Sujin pouted lightly in that teasing, public way she'd mastered. Come on, don't embarrass me in front of my parents. Just try one. The heat rose in my chest before I could stop it. My chopsticks clattered onto the table. He's allergic, I snapped. The silence that followed was suffocating. My father glanced up sharply. My mother blinked, confused. Sujin froze only a second too long before releasing a soft laugh. Oh, right, how silly of me. I must have forgotten. She touched Jaehyun's wrist lightly, like that would smooth everything over. No one else noticed how his shoulders stiffened at her touch. But I did, and that was giving me all sort of signals I tried to ignore. How come she didn't know he was allergic? That was one of the things I discovered about him that day we went out for coffee as a payment for the painting. Surely he must have told his fiancé, right? Right? I barely heard the rest of dinner. My wife gave me a look that burned into the side of my head, but I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at anyone. On the drive home, the silence was thick until she finally spoke. Do you want to tell me what that was? I kept my eyes on the window. It was nothing. Don't lie to me, Jin. Her voice wasn't accusing. I know we keep our affairs private. I don't ask about yours, you don't ask about mine. But I saw the way you looked at him. I saw the way you snapped. This isn't nothing. My throat tightened. For once I didn't want to dodge. I didn't want to lie. Jaehyun, we were dating. Before the marriage. For 3 years. She blinked. The weight of my words seemed to settle over her like a slow tide. 3 years? Yes. I clenched my hands in my lap. And I ended it before our wedding, I thought. I swallowed. I haven't seen him since then. Not until that dinner with Sujin. Her eyes softened, but she didn't reach for me. So that's why you look like the air was sucked out of your lungs tonight. I almost laughed. It came out as a bitter exhale. Yura, my ex, is my sister's fiancé. She knew we were dating. Everything is so confusing right now, and Sujin wouldn't talk to me about it. She was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. Then find out why. Don't just sit there and drown. You owe yourself that much. She was right. I have to find out why. I don't believe Sujin word when she said they just happened to meet. And like Yura had suggested, I was going to take action, just to satisfy my curiosity. The chance came unexpectedly. I'd gone to the gallery to inspect the final stages before the investors' tour. Staff gave me reports, bowed politely, but my attention caught on a figure in a side room. It was Jaehyun. He was bent over a canvas, brush moving in smooth, deliberate strokes. He was alone. Focused. The mask he wore in meetings was gone, and for the first time since I saw him again, I saw the Jaehyun I remembered. The one who breathed when he painted. The one who looked alive and felt like freedom. I didn't realize I'd stepped closer until he set down the brush and glanced up. CEO Han, he said, voice quiet, almost flat, the title cut deeper than I expected. My throat tightened. Where have you been? It came out softer than I meant, almost pleading. His gaze lingered on me, unreadable. Around, trying to survive. I exhaled, feeling the words I'd been holding back burn on my tongue. I'm sorry, his brows furrowed. For what? For everything. For the way I left. For not fighting. For making you hate me. For a moment, he just stared. Then something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, maybe hurt, but not hate. Who said I hate you? He murmured. My chest clenched so tightly I could barely breathe. I walked in to take a closer look at what he was working on. It looked like he just started just an array of colors that he once told me were layout. Is this one of the painting you will be displaying for the festival? It could be, if I can just finish it on time. Do you have an idea what you want to paint there? Yeah, but translating it into painting is where I am stuck. Just as I was about to respond, he said, hold on, and he stepped closer, tugging lightly at my sleeve. Paint had smeared across the fabric. He reached for a cloth, dabbing gently at the stain, his face so close I could see the flecks of brown in his eyes. My heart thundered. My gaze fell to his lips. I leaned in, slowly. His breath mingled with mine, and for a moment, it felt like gravity itself was pulling us together again. CEO Han. My secretary's voice cut through the doorway, a knock following a second later. We jolted apart. The moment shattered, leaving me raw and aching, the weight of everything unsaid pressing harder than ever. I should go, I said softly, and then headed towards the door with my heart beating out of my chest, and a conclusion brewing. He was definitely leaning in, and that look in his eyes, that was not the look of someone who had moved on. I hadn't been able to sleep. Even with the soft hum of the city bleeding through the walls of my penthouse, the quiet was deafening. Every time I shut my eyes, Sujin's voice from dinner echoed, sweet and polished, but dripping with something poisonous I couldn't name. Jaehyun's face so close to mine, pleading. I had questions, and this time, I wasn't going to ignore them. So the next morning, instead of heading straight to the office, I drove to my sister's apartment. The concierge bowed as I passed. The polished marble floor reflected my shoes like a mirror. She opened the door herself, perfectly styled even in a silk robe. Sujin always knew how to look like she was performing. Oppa, she said, feigning surprise, though I knew she had been tracking my every move since last night. What brings you here so early? I walked past her into the living room. You've been avoiding me. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. Avoiding you? Don't be dramatic. I've been busy, you know that. The project is on my shoulders. Someone has to keep the family image polished. Galas, interviews, press. Not all of us get to hide behind boardroom tables. The jab landed, but I ignored it. Why Jaehyun? That got her attention. She stilled, wine glass halfway to her lips. Then, slowly, she set it down and folded her arms. Why not? You knew? My voice cracked before I steadied it. You knew he and I. Yes, I knew. She cut me off with a bitter laugh. I also knew you chose the family over him. You chose duty over love. Isn't that right, Oppa? The word dug into my skin, shame cutting through me. She leaned closer, voice dropping into a whisper only I could hear. The difference between us is that I will have both. Duty and love. You can sit with your choices and your regret, and perhaps it's been 2 years already. Jaehyun had moved on. You should too. It took everything not to snap. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked out. She was right about one thing. I was a coward. By the time I reached my office, my head was pounding. My secretary had stacked a pile of files on my desk, but one of the accountants was waiting, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Mr. Han, I need to discuss something privately. We shut the door. He laid out the documents, pointing to a series of transactions tied to the Art Center project. The numbers didn't add up. Funds routed through a shell supplier named Park Sung-jin. It's under the art division, sir, he said, but every document trails back to Mr. Jaehyun's desk. I thought you should see it. I clenched my jaw. Was this a mistake or something? Anyway, I was going to handle it. I'll handle it, I said to the accountant, and he excused himself. After work, I drove straight to Jaehyun's studio. The smell of turpentine clung to the air when I walked into the studio. Jaehyun was crouched on the floor, sleeves rolled up, smudges of blue paint streaking his wrist. For a moment, I just stood there, watching him. He still painted like the world was listening. He glanced up, caught me staring, and smirked. You planning to just stand there like a creep? Or are you going to come in? I snorted, setting the pizza box on the nearest table. I brought peace offerings. Ah, he said, rising to his feet, the universal olive branch. What flavor? Half pepperoni, half mushroom, just how you like it. His lips curved, but he didn't answer. Instead, he wiped his hands, walked over, and opened the box like it was holy scripture. You actually remembered. Some things, I murmured, aren't easy to forget. He froze for a fraction of a second before recovering, grabbing a slice. You've always been dramatic, Jin. I sat opposite him, the silence strangely comfortable. For a while, it was just us chewing pizza in a paint-splattered room. Then he asked lightly, so how's it feel being CEO? Still drowning in numbers and ties? Numbers don't drown me. People do, I said dryly. He laughed, head tipping back, and for a moment I almost forgot why I was here. Almost. Speaking of people, I added casually, reaching for another slice, do you think supplier Park Sung-jin would love to have his collection displayed at the opening? Jin blinked, frowning in confusion. Park Sung-jin? There's no supplier by that name in Korea. At least not in the circles I've been pulling from. And trust me, after months in this project, I'd know. I forced a shrug, masking the jolt in my chest. Really? Must have mixed up the name then. He gave me a long look, like he wanted to press further, but instead just shook his head and took another bite of pizza. Ah, he said around a mouthful. You are too young to be forgetting names, Mr. Han. I laughed quietly at his jab, but inside, my mind was already racing. He reached for another slice, the cheese stretching messily. A smear of red sauce landed on the corner of my mouth, and before I could move, Jaehyun leaned across the table. Hold still, he said almost under his breath. His thumb brushed against my lip, warm and deliberate, wiping the stain away. For a second too long, he didn't pull back. His touch lingered, and I felt the world tilt. "Still messy," he murmured, his eyes lifting to mine. I swallowed hard, my gaze locked on his face. So close. Close enough to see the faint specks of paint clinging to his lashes. Close enough to remember the way he used to kiss me years ago. The silence grew heavy. His eyes lingered on me, softer now, unreadable. "Jaehyun," I started, my voice rough, but just then my phone buzzed violently against the table. My secretary's name flashed on the screen, shattering the moment. I pulled back, coughing into my fist as if that would steady the chaos inside me. He sat back too, reaching for his slice like nothing had happened, but the tips of his ears were faintly red. "Work calls," he said lightly, though his voice wasn't as steady as he wanted it to be. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, work." But as I walked out of the studio, my lips still burned where his thumb had touched, and my heart felt like it had been ripped open all over again. When I got home, I found Yura in the kitchen, pouring herself tea. She glanced up when I walked in, her eyes immediately narrowing. "You look like hell," she said plainly. I dropped into the chair across from her, loosening my tie. "There's something wrong with the project, Yura. Financial discrepancies. Money flowing to a fake supplier, one Jaehyun has never even heard of." Her brow arched. "And you're sure he's telling the truth?" "Yes," I said, firmer than I intended. He looked confused. "Genuinely. Which means someone else is pulling the strings. And Sujin's name is all over the approvals." She leaned back, sipping her tea with deliberate calm. "Well, something's definitely fishy. But let me be clear about something, Jin." Her eyes met mine, sharp and unflinching. "Aside from this potentially blowing up the project, why does it upset you this much? Why does it shake you like this?" Her words lingered between us heavy, then softly she asked, "Are you still in love with him?" I didn't answer, but she saw it anyway. The look in my eyes gave me away. Am I still in love with him? The thought pierced through me, quiet but merciless. I have never stopped. He is the love of my life. Yura let out a breath, setting her cup down. That's all I needed to know. She leaned forward, voice steady, businesslike. "Then we dig. Carefully. If Sujin's playing games, let's find out together." I stared at her, a rush of gratitude threading through the guilt in my chest. Yura wasn't just my partner on paper, she was my anchor. "Together," I echoed. "And one thing about Yura is she works fast, so when morning comes, she puts our plans into motion." "How is it going?" I asked. Yura poured herself a glass of water before answering me. "I've already set something in motion. I hired a private investigator yesterday to look into that supplier name. It'll take time, but he's discreet, Yujin. Nobody will know." I nodded, relief mingling with unease. Nobody will know. That was the key. One wrong step, one careless move, and Sujin would turn this into a war. "Until then," Yura continued, "you do what you always do best, keep a straight face." A straight face. As if my face hadn't been betraying me every time Jaehyun walked into a room. With the festival fast approaching, we decided to host a charity gala, bringing in the creme de la creme of the country in one place. The gala was Sujin's idea. Our family's cultural contribution to Seoul's art community. The invitation card boasted in gold letters. But I knew what it really was. Sujin's stage. A night for her to parade Jaehyun under chandeliers and flashing cameras. A night to cement their narrative in the eyes of every board member, investor, and whispering relative. I arrived with Yura at my side. We played our parts well. Greetings, smiles, the obligatory handshakes, but my eyes kept drifting. To the stage. To Sujin, dazzling in a silver gown, her hand looped tightly through Jaehyun's arm as if she were staking a claim. He looked the part. Black suit, composed face, polite bow to every guest. But something in his eyes was muted. That light I used to know, the one that spilled out of him when he talked about colors, about freedom. After the long speech, I stepped away, taking a call. Away from the noise in a dimly lit corridor, lined with velvet drapes. I was just a few minutes into the call when I heard voices that sounded like my sister and Jaehyun. "You remember the deal, don't you?" Sujin's tone was low, sharp. "Yes," Jaehyun replied, steady but softer. "Good. Then don't slip. Not tonight, not ever. If you even think about walking away." She paused, her heels clicking as she moved closer. "I can ruin you with one word. Do you understand?" Silence. Then Jaehyun's quiet answer, "I understand." I froze, every muscle taut. My breath felt like a hammer in my chest. Ruin him? What kind of hold did she have over him? I wanted to storm in, demand answers, but instinct told me not here, not now. When I returned to the main hall, Yura caught the look on my face immediately. "What happened?" she murmured. "Something's wrong. He's not here by choice." Her eyes flicked to Jaehyun, back to me, calm, assessing. "Then we'll prove it." "But Jaehyun," she touched my arm, grounding me. "You need to control yourself. If you lose it now, she wins." I exhaled slowly, forcing the tremor out of my hands. Back on stage, Yura raised a toast, smiling like the perfect daughter, the perfect fiancé. Jaehyun stood beside her, expression carved in stone. I lifted my glass with everyone else, but my mind was elsewhere. My guts were right after all. Behind the masks, the cracks were beginning to show. And I was going to tear them wide open. My first step to doing that was getting Jaehyun to open up to me. I needed to know what the deal was between him and my sister. It was late afternoon at the project site. The gallery still smelling faintly of fresh plaster and paint when I arrived. Workers had left for the day, leaving behind scaffolds and quiet echoes. I'd come under the pretense of reviewing progress, but really, I was searching for Jaehyun. I needed to get him alone. I saw him in that same room, painting details on a large canvas propped against the wall. His movements were careful, almost mechanical, like someone forcing themselves into rhythm. For a moment, I just watched. The way the light caught in his dark curls, the quiet furrow of concentration on his brow. My chest ached with the familiarity of it. "Working overtime?" I said finally, stepping closer. He startled, then glanced back. "Mr. Han." Back to formality again. A pang hit me. "Really? We're doing that?" His gaze flicked to mine, sharp. The same glare that once dared me to stop hiding who I was. "It's your building we're in. Isn't this what you wanted?" I bit down on the retort that rose and then softened. "No, it's not what I wanted." He hesitated, brush hovering above the canvas. Then he sighed, setting it down. "Fine. Hello, Sujin." Something loosened in me at the sound of my name and his voice. I managed a crooked smile. "Finally." We stood there in the half-empty room, silence folding around us. My heart thudded painfully. I wanted to ask everything at once. What's going on between you and my sister? What is the deal here? What does she have against you that could ruin you? But I forced myself to start simple. "Are you happy, Jaehyun?" The question left me before I could stop it. He froze. His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn. For a long while, he just stared at the canvas. When he finally answered, his voice was quiet. "Happiness isn't really the point, is it?" "That's not an answer." He gave a small, tired laugh. "Then no, I'm not happy, but I'm surviving. That's enough." The words lodged in my chest like glass splinters. Surviving. That wasn't him. That wasn't the man who kissed me. A stranger he met not more than a week, through a car window with a grin and said, "Hopefully see you again." Why her? My voice cracked despite myself. My sister, of all people. How did that even happen? "I already told you, we met and connected." He turned then, finally looking at me. His face was composed, but his eyes, they were too still. "I call bullshit. Tell me the truth, Jaehyun," I said firmly. He sighed and then said, "She reached out when my studio was failing, offered support, we connected." He shrugged lightly. "Life is strange like that. A neat, believable story, but I don't believe it. Not after what I'd heard backstage, but I didn't push. Not yet." Instead, I stepped closer to him, close enough to hover closely, lowering my voice. "Jaehyun, if there's something you can't say." He cut me off, shaking his head and stepping back to put more distance in between us. "Don't, please. Just don't." The plea in his tone gutted me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. "All right." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he reached for the pizza box, sitting abandoned on a nearby stool, flipping it open. "You hungry?" I blinked at him, caught off guard. He smirked faintly, the ghost of old Jaehyun peeking through. "Don't look so shocked. I remember you're useless when you skip meals." I laughed, shaky but real, and took a slice. Some things never change. We ate in silence, shoulders brushing once when we reached for the same slice. A warmth hummed beneath the quiet, fragile, dangerous, but real. For the first time since he'd returned, it felt like we were almost us again. And I knew right there that whatever Sujin had on him, whatever this arrangement really was, Jaehyun still had feelings for me, and I will be damned if I let the man I love suffer twice. By the time I returned to my office, the taste of pizza still lingered faintly on my tongue. But it wasn't just that. It was the echo of Jaehyun's laugh, small and reluctant, but real. The brush of his shoulder against mine. The reminder that no matter how much had changed, some part of us still existed. I wanted to stay in that memory. But Yura was waiting for me. She was seated in one of the armchairs across from my desk, legs crossed, her tablet balanced neatly on her knee. Her face was unreadable, but I knew that look. The one she wore whenever she had news. Serious news. "You're back late," she said casually. "Site inspection ran long." I took my seat, loosening my tie. "What did you find?" Her lips pressed together, the barest pause before she handed me the tablet. I leaned forward. On the screen were spreadsheets, bank statements, invoices. Yura's finger tapped a highlighted section. "Your hunch was right. The name you mentioned, Park Seong-jin, he doesn't exist. At least, not in the registry of approved suppliers. What we found instead is a series of shell companies. Money's being funneled through them, redirected out of the project's budget." "How much?" My throat was dry. "Enough to raise eyebrows at the board if this gets out." She leaned back, arms folding. "The interesting part? Every approval signature leads back to Sujin. On paper it's airtight. Looks like she's the one benefiting. But Jaehyun's the one handling documentation." She nodded, "Which means either he's completely oblivious or she's using him as cover. Either way, he's tangled up in this." I sat back, exhaling slowly. My chest was tight, but not from surprise. Deep down, I'd known something was wrong. "Do you think he's involved?" I asked quietly. Yura studied me. "What do you think?" I rubbed my face with my hands. The memory of Jaehyun's voice echoed again. "I'm surviving. That's enough." His too neat story of how they met and connected. The silence in his eyes when he asked me not to push. "No," I said finally. "Not him. Not like this. He wouldn't." Yura tilted her head. "So you believe your sister is orchestrating it, and he's just a pawn?" "I don't believe," I said, my voice harder than I expected. "I know." She was quiet for a moment, then gave a small nod. "All right, then we tread carefully. If she suspects we're digging, she'll tighten the leash. And if she has something on Jaehyun..." "She does." The words slipped out. Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I hesitated. I hadn't told anyone about what I'd overheard backstage at the gala. But this was Yura, my partner in every sense and the one person who'd never betrayed me. So I told her, every word. Sujin's threat, Jaehyun's silence. When I finished, Yura's expression was grim. Then we need to know exactly what leverage she has over him. Without that, we can't free him, or expose her. Expose her? I asked, slightly shocked. Her lips curved faintly. You didn't think I was helping you just to keep your conscience clear, did you? If Sujin is embezzling, she's not just endangering your reputation. She's putting the entire company at risk. If this project collapses, the board will eat you alive. I swallowed. She was right. This wasn't just about me or Jaehyun. It was bigger. So what do? We keep the investigation contained, she said firmly. Just me, you, and the PI. No one else. We gather evidence quietly. Meanwhile, you, her eyes softened. You keep Jaehyun close. If he's being forced, the cracks will show, and when they do, we'll be ready. I leaned back, heart pounding. Keep Jaehyun close. The words felt dangerous, but wasn't that what I wanted anyway? I thought of his smile over a slice of pizza, of the way he looked at me, guarded but not unfeeling, of the almost we had once shared. For the first time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could save him. Yura's findings rattled in my chest long after she left. The evidence was damning. Sujin's fingerprints were all over the embezzlement, but Jaehyun's name, his handwriting, his presence was entangled in the paperwork. She told me to keep him close. That was the plan. But the truth was, I wanted to. That's what led me to sending him a message after work. Drinks tonight? Just us. He didn't answer right away. That pause alone nearly killed me. Then the reply came, short, like he was testing the waters. Fine. One drink. When he showed up at the small lounge I picked, he looked different. Looser without the office walls boxing us in, but still guarded. Why here? Jaehyun asked, sliding onto the stool beside me. Because I needed a place where you wouldn't glare at me every 5 seconds, I said, pouring just enough sarcasm to mask my nerves. His lips twitched like he wanted to smile, but refused. Don't push it. We ordered, and for a while we just sat there, nursing our drinks. It wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt dangerous. Like every second of silence was daring one of us to break it. I finally did. You've changed, I said quietly. Jaehyun raised an eyebrow. That's supposed to be a compliment? It's just, you used to fill every room you walked into. Now it feels like you're holding yourself back. He smirked faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Or maybe you're just seeing me differently. Maybe. I took a sip of my drink, studying him over the rim. Still, you always carried too much alone. You still do. That made him look at me, really look at me. His lips parted like he wanted to say something sharp, but instead he let out a breathy laugh. Since when do you get to read me like that? You forfeited that right. I didn't forfeit anything, I said, softer than I meant to. I just lost the chance. That silenced him. His fingers tapped the side of his glass, restless, until the back of his hand brushed mine on the bar. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't careful either. Neither of us moved away. Jaehyun, he murmured, and I could hear the warning wrapped in my name. But there was something else there too. Something raw. Something that had never gone away. So I leaned in, slowly, giving him time to stop me. He didn't. His eyes flicked to my mouth at the last second, and then he met me halfway. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was all the years we'd lost colliding at once. Clumsy, hungry, aching. I felt his hand curl into my shirt like he was anchoring himself. Felt the tremor in his breath when he pressed even closer as his tongue explored every corner of my mouth. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. And then, just as suddenly, he broke away. His forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. His eyes glistened, and it killed me because I knew mine probably did too. I shouldn't have. His voice cracked, his hand slipping from my shirt. I can't. Before I could stop him, he pulled back completely, grabbed his coat, and walked out, leaving me alone with the taste of him still on my lips and a hollow ache where my heart had been holding out hope. I didn't go home immediately that night. Instead, I drove in circles instead, replaying the taste of him, the way he almost let go, the way he pulled away. By the time I finally dragged myself back to my apartment, Yura was waiting in my study, arms crossed, a thin folder in her hands. She didn't waste time. We've got something. I rubbed at my temples. Now? Yes, now. She slid the file across the desk. A follow-up from what we discovered last time. The whole fake supplier scheme is bigger than we thought. We've discovered more, and the account attached to it traces offshore. Funds have been moving through it for months, siphoned directly from the art project's budget. My throat dried. So Sujin is laundering money, Yujin. That much is obvious. But here's the twist. Yura leaned forward. The account isn't just hers. It's in both their names, Sujin and Jaehyun. The words slammed into me harder than any punch. No, I said too quickly. Jaehyun doesn't. He wouldn't. Yura's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. You want to believe that, but everything we've seen points to him being neck deep in this. I shoved back from the desk, pacing. No, he doesn't even know how to lie about his favorite color. If he's in it, he's been dragged in. You're betting your company and maybe your freedom on that? I didn't answer, because I couldn't. If you're wrong, Yujin, it won't matter whether Jaehyun is innocent or not. His name is on those accounts, and once the board, the prosecutors, and the press get hold of it, he'll be finished. If you really believe in him, then get proof. Don't just gamble your gut. She was right. She was always right. I sat there long into the night, staring at the ceiling, replaying her challenge over and over until the truth stung raw in my chest. If I was betting everything, my family, my company, my own sanity, on the belief that Jaehyun wasn't complicit, then I needed more than feelings. I needed evidence. And I know just how to get it. The festival opened the next day with a roar of light and color. Cameras flashed like lightning as guests streamed past the red carpet entrance. The air was thick with perfume, laughter, and the hum of reporters barking questions. The art installations glimmered under spotlights, each piece curated to impress. It should have been a triumph, months of planning made flesh. And yet all I could see was him. Jaehyun stood at Sujin's side, shoulders squared, smile practiced, suit pressed so sharply it could cut. But his eyes, they weren't the eyes I remembered. They flickered too fast, too cautious, a man playing a part. During one interview, a reporter asked him about his creative process, and before he could answer, Sujin slid smoothly in with her polished PR voice. He works tirelessly, day and night. His vision is what makes this project so unique. Jaehyun's jaw tightened, his lips parted as if he wanted to speak, then snapped shut. The mask slipped, just for a second, but Sujin's hand on his arm forced it back into place. She laughed, the cameras flashed, and the moment was swallowed whole. I found him later, away from the flashing bulbs, standing in a quiet corridor lined with smaller works. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, head bowed like he was searching for oxygen. "Jaehyun," I said softly. His head jerked up, guarded. "Not now, Yujin." I swallowed, forcing my tone steady. "I just wanted to apologize." That made him pause. His brows knit. "Apologize?" "For the bar," I said, my voice low, "waited. For crossing the line that night. I shouldn't have." The silence stretched between us. His eyes softened, but only for a breath, before the wall came back up. He turned, ready to leave. But I caught his arm, pulled him in. Not a full embrace, more a half hug, half grasp, like holding on to something slipping away. My hand pressed briefly against his back. In that fleeting contact, I pinned the camera beneath his jacket collar. "I just needed you to know I'm sorry," I murmured into the space between us. He stiffened, but didn't push me away. For one heartbeat too long, he stood there, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of turpentine clinging to his suit. Then he pulled back, his gaze unreadable. "Don't do this here," he whispered. And then he walked away, shoulders taut, mask sliding back on as he disappeared into the noise of the gala. That night, the house was dark, except for the glow of Yura's laptop. We sat shoulder to shoulder, the air heavy with tension as the footage played. The view in front of us was a half shot of Sujin and Jaehyun. He seemed to have placed his jacket on the arm of the chair, giving us a good view. The grainy video caught Sujin's voice first, sharp as glass. "You almost slipped at dinner," she hissed, pacing with a glass of wine in hand. "I didn't," Jaehyun snapped. His face was pale. "But these numbers, these documents, I don't understand half of it. Why do you need me to sign everything?" Sujin's reply was ice dressed in silk. "Because you're the artist, the face, people trust you. Me? I'm the one making sure this project actually pays. You just smile, sign, and play the doting fiancé. That's your role." I leaned closer, my fists curling against my knees. Jaehyun's voice cracked. "You're using me for something, and you are keeping me out of the loop." A soft, cruel laugh. "No, darling, I'm protecting you. Remember, without me, you're nothing but a scandal waiting to be devoured." Static buzzed as the feed ended. The room went silent. Yura leaned back, her arms crossed, expression grim. "There it is. Proof. He's trapped." But I barely heard her. All I could hear was Jaehyun's voice, breaking under pressure, still fighting in his quiet way. And all I could think was, I let him drown alone once, never again. The next morning, I was at his studio, clicking the door shut behind us and locking it. My pulse was pounding, a drum in my throat, but my voice came out steady. "Jaehyun, we need to talk." He looked up from the canvas, his eyes narrowing like he'd been caught stealing time itself. "I told you, Yujin. Not now. I'm exhausted." "No." I cut him off, stepping forward. "You're not going to walk away from me again. Not this time." He blinked, startled, then his mouth pressed into a thin, sharp line. "What the hell are you talking about?" I pulled my phone out, set it on the table between us, and hit play. The room filled with his voice, trembling, defiant. "I didn't sign up for this. Why do you need my name on everything?" And Yura's cruel laugh. "Because you're the artist, the face, people trust you. Me? I'm the one making sure this project actually pays. You just smile, sign, and play the doting fiancé." Silence swallowed us whole when the recording ended. Jaehyun went pale. His chest rose and fell unevenly, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "You bugged me?" His voice cracked, equal parts fury and fear. I met his gaze without flinching. "You're damn right I did. Because I don't know what's happening to you anymore, and I can't stand watching from the sidelines. So tell me, Jaehyun, what the hell is going on?" He turned his back on me, running a trembling hand through his hair. For a long moment, I thought he'd stay silent. Then his voice broke, low and tired. "She approached me a year ago." The words were so soft I almost missed them. I waited, my heart hammering. My father's art center was going under. The funding had dried up, sponsors had pulled out, and he laughed bitterly. I had no idea how to save it. "I can paint, Yujin. I can build worlds out of color, but running an institution, managing people, money, investors, I was drowning." I closed my eyes, a sharp ache splitting my chest. "Then Sujin came," he continued, his tone tightening with every word. She offered a deal. She would get the funding I needed through one of her projects, wrap the center into her portfolio, keep my father's legacy alive. In exchange, she got her face of the project, me, the artist everyone trusted, the one who could soften her image with the public. It was supposed to be win-win. He let out a shaky breath. She even told me, if we announced our engagement, it would silence rumors about her, cement her as the dutiful daughter, and strengthen her claim for the CEO position. A contract marriage, clean and simple. And for me, he paused, voice catching. For me, it meant I got to be near you again. Even if you weren't mine, even if it hurt, I thought, stupidly, that it would be enough. I staggered back a step. Jaehyun, his laugh was harsh, almost broken. The night you came to me before your wedding, do you even know what state I was in? My father had died a few days before. And then you. His voice cracked, his eyes blazing. You stood there, offering pieces of yourself I couldn't have. I had just buried the only parent who believed in me, and I was watching the only man I ever loved marry someone else. Guilt ripped through me, cold and merciless. Why didn't you tell me? You should have come to me instead. I whispered. He spun, his fury uncoiled. Why didn't I come to you? 3 years. We were together for 3 goddamn years, and you left me with nothing. You chose your duty, your family, your reputation, everything else but me, like I was disposable. His voice shook. So no, the thought of running to you never crossed my mind. I was too damn angry. Angry enough to throw a whole bucket of paint in your face if you dared step closer. I swallowed hard, his words carving straight through me. You're right. I was a coward. I should have fought for you. I should never have let you go, and I am so damn sorry, Jaehyun. The anger in his eyes flickered, softened by something raw and unguarded. But listen to me, I pressed on, stepping closer, my voice dropping low, steady. I want to make things right this time. I can't do that unless you tell me everything. What she's done, what else she's holding over you, the documents you signed. All of it. For a moment, he just stared at me, chest heaving. Then, slowly, he sank onto the ground by the easel, dragging a tired hand down his face. I'm so tired, Yujin, he whispered. All I ever wanted was to paint, and now I can't even finish this one canvas. His eyes flicked to the half-finished painting beside him, the strokes jagged, unfinished. The inspiration's gone. This whole situation is draining me. I walked closer to him and sat down on the ground and watched as he exhaled sharply. Then began to talk. She had me sign off on vendor approvals, overseas supply deals. Half the time I barely understood the paperwork. But I trusted her. It was supposed to be about art. Then it turned into money flowing through shell companies I'd never heard of. Accounts in my name. I've signed purchase orders for suppliers that don't exist, shipping invoices that never arrived. The last one was under a name, Park Sung-jin, but there's no Park Sung-jin in the registry. She brushed it off, but he shook his head. It's a mess, and now if it comes out, it'll look like I orchestrated all of it. My fists clenched. She was smart, ruthless. She had tethered every rope to Jaehyun so when it unraveled, he'd be the one to hang. I took a breath and told him what Yura and I had uncovered, the discrepancies, the financial trails, the shell supplier. With every word, his shoulders slumped further. And then he burst into tears. My God, what have I gotten myself into? I pulled him into a hug, held him tightly and said, it wasn't your fault, it was all mine, and I am so sorry, hon. With this, he pulled me even closer, still sobbing quietly against my shoulders. I reclined a little bit, raising his head to meet mine while wiping the tears from his eyes, and kissed him. God, he looked so beautiful. So I kissed him, again and again, and with each kiss he gripped my shoulder tighter and slid into my lap. I savored the feel of him against me, the familiar warmth I have missed for 2 good years. We kissed until he finally calmed down and leaned his head against my shoulder, and without thinking, I lifted a hand and patted his hair gently, grounding us both. What now? He asked, his voice barely audible. I stared at the canvas, at the color half-born, waiting to be completed. Now we expose her, before she burns everything to the ground. I had already made up my mind, but we needed a plan. By evening the next day, I slipped into the studio again. This time, Jaehyun was waiting for me, not with paint on his hands, but with a folder pressed tight to his chest. His eyes were rimmed red from lack of sleep, yet steady. He handed it to me. Copies of contracts, financial approvals, everything she had me sign the last year. I took it slowly as though the papers themselves might shatter. Page after page, I saw his name printed in thick ink, his signature scrawled across the bottom. Approval for overseas suppliers I'd never heard of. Budgets inflated beyond reason. Marketing firms that no one in the industry recognizes. She told me they were partnerships, Jaehyun said quietly, watching my face. Sponsorship deals, expansion plans. She made it sound like the future, and I wanted to believe her. His voice cracked. Because if she was right, I'd save the art center. I thought I was being useful. I clenched my jaw. You weren't the one lying. He gave a hollow laugh, but I was the one signing. For hours, we spread the documents across the floor like pieces of a puzzle. Jaehyun scribbled notes in the margins, while I cross-checked with company records on my tablet. The deeper we went, the clearer the picture became. Shell companies registered abroad, each conveniently linked back to a supplier, supposedly providing rare art materials. Funds wired out in increments small enough to avoid triggering audits, but steady enough to drain millions over time. A contract buried in fine print that handed Sujin emergency discretionary authority over any losses tied to the art project. I felt my blood run cold. If the project failed, or if she staged it to fail, Jaehyun would take the fall as project director. The company's reputation would collapse, and Sujin would walk away clean, richer than ever. Jaehyun sank onto the floor back against the wall. He rubbed at his face with paint-stained fingers. So that's it. I've been her shield. I knelt in front of him, lowering my voice. No, you've been her victim. Don't forget the difference. The plan began to form between us like an unspoken rhythm. We already had all we needed, which was step 1. Step 2, time it right. The upcoming board meeting where she planned to announce the merger. That would be her stage, which meant it had to be ours too. Step 3, protect Jaehyun. No matter what came out, no matter how messy, I couldn't let her pin this on him. As we talked right there in his studio, the weight between us shifted. For the first time in weeks, we weren't fighting each other. We were side by side, conspirators against the same enemy. Jaehyun reached for a cold slice of pizza left forgotten on the table. He bit into it without looking up, then nudged the box toward me. Want one? Tastes like cardboard now, but misery loves company. I chuckled despite myself taking a slice. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled back right away. But then, Jaehyun's smile dimmed. Do you think we can really beat her? I looked at him, tired, brilliant, scarred by choices he never should have been forced to make. And I said, firmly, we don't need to beat her. We just need to show the truth. The rest will take care of itself. When I finally left the studio, the city was asleep. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Yura. Working quietly on the Shell Company lead. We'll update soon. Don't act until I confirm. I tightened my grip on the phone, a strange mix of dread and relief pressing against my chest. The plan was in motion. Now all that was left was to hold my ground and hope that this time I wouldn't falter. The next day, I was still pacing in my office, turning the pieces of Sujin's scheme over and over in my head when my secretary burst in without knocking. His face was pale, his breath uneven. Sir, I thought you should know. Your sister has arranged a meeting with the chairman. It's framed as a project review. I frowned. Review? Why isn't it on my calendar? He swallowed hard. Because, sir, it wasn't cleared through you. The meeting is in 20 minutes. I overheard her assistant mention she intends to pitch something bigger, possibly a merger. A cold shiver raced down my spine. So this was it. Stage 2 of her plan. I immediately grabbed my phone and dialed Jaehyun. He picked up quickly, his voice soft, wary. Jaehyun? Sujin's meeting is today. Did you know about this? I asked, almost too sharply. There was a pause. Then, no, nothing. My gut tightened. Then she's staging it. Jaehyun, listen to me. This is her next move. She'll use the project's success as leverage and push the chairman. It's exactly what we feared. Get to the office now. I'll be there, he said without hesitation. The moment I hung up, I called Yura. She didn't need explanation, not anymore. Boardroom. Now, bring everything. 20 minutes later, I pushed open the heavy double doors. The meeting was already in full swing. Sujin stood near the projection screen, perfectly poised, her tone smooth as silk as she spoke about the unprecedented success of her collaboration with Jaehyun and how it positioned the company for greater expansion. And with the right leadership, we can push toward a merger that would not only secure our legacy but elevate us globally, she finished, turning toward the chairman, our father, with a serene smile. The board murmured approvingly. My father leaned back, expression unreadable. I stepped forward. Funny. I didn't realize we were discussing mergers today. Heads turned. Whispers rippled across the table. Sujin's smile faltered for half a second before snapping back into place. Oppa, she said sweetly. You're late. No, I said, my voice cutting across the room. I wasn't invited. The silence that followed was sharp as glass. Father's gaze shifted from her to me. What is this about, Yujin? Before I could answer, the doors opened again. Jaehyun slipped in, slightly breathless but composed. His eyes found mine for the briefest second before settling on Sujin. Her jaw tightened. Before we proceed with the meeting, there's something the board needs to hear, I said. Sujin intercepted immediately. If this is about operations, we can discuss afterward. We shouldn't derail. It's about corruption, fraud, and the person orchestrating it from within this very room, I said immediately, cutting her off. The air cracked. Murmurs erupted. Faces turned, some incredulous, others startled. Sujin smiled tightly and said, Careful, Yujin. Accusations without proof can be damaging. To you. The last part came almost like a warning. That was when the door opened again. Yura walked in, set the folder on the table, sliding it toward the chairman. Then let's deal in proof. The chairman opened the file, pulling out glossy photographs, printed bank transfers, contract copies. One by one, she began laying them out across the table like playing cards in a deadly game. Offshore accounts traced to Yura's name. Fake shell companies diverting art center funding. Contracts with falsified signatures, Jaehyun's among them. An incriminating email chain linking her to bribed officials. Gasps rose. A few board members stood halfway, peering over to see the damning evidence. This is absurd. These can be fabricated. Sujin said, snapping, her already composure cracking. Jaehyun spoke up just then. They're not fabricated. I signed some of those contracts, under her direction. She told me it was temporary funding for the art center, but it was a lie. Sujin straightened, her tone louder now, for the board to hear. Chairman, it's clear what's happening here. Jaehyun has been taking advantage of this family's resources. He's using his ties to us for personal gain, and now my brother is covering for him. The gall of her words made my blood burn, but before I could speak, Jaehyun did. His voice was steady, carrying through the room. That's not true. I was brought into this by Sujin herself. She approached me, offered a partnership, promised it would save my center. I trusted her. He drew in a breath. But what she didn't tell me was that she was laundering funds, that I was signing off on false documents. A stir ran through the board. Sujin's smile cracked. Lies, all lies. He's desperate. I cut her off, my voice iron. Really? Because I have more proof. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table, pressing play. The recording filled the room. Her voice, sharp and venomous, threatening Jaehyun, binding him with the contracts, manipulating him. Gasps rose. Board members exchanged startled looks. The room exploded in noise. Father leaned forward, his face darkening with every page he read. Sujin, he said finally, his voice like thunder. I gave you everything. Trust, responsibility, and you betray it like this? Sujin paled. Abba, no, you don't understand. But the board had seen enough. The chairman's gavel struck. You are suspended immediately, pending full investigation. The sound of security approaching echoed down the hall. No, you can't do this to me. I am this company. Sujin snapped, her voice rising in hysteria. She spun toward Jaehyun, her hand flying. The crack of her slap echoed across the room. You worthless ingrate. I lifted you from nothing, and this is how you repay me? Betraying me with him? Her voice broke into a scream, venom lacing every word. Just like my useless brother discarded you once, he'll discard you again. You're nothing, Jaehyun. Nothing. I didn't even think. I stepped between them, grabbing her wrist and pushing her back. My voice was a growl. That's enough. She struggled against me, her face twisted with rage, but security finally stepped in, pulling her away. Even as they dragged her from the room, she was still screaming, her words sharp enough to cut flesh. You'll regret this, Yujin. Both of you will regret this. The doors slammed shut behind her. Silence fell over the boardroom, heavy and suffocating. My father closed his eyes, weary. These kids, he muttered. He pushed back from the table and left without another word. Slowly, the board began to disperse, whispers and shaken expressions filling the air. The damage had been done, but the worst had been prevented. I sat back, exhaustion flooding me. That was when Yura walked up to me, calm, steady, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She slipped an envelope into my hand. What's this? I asked, frowning. A gift, she said softly. Then, turning to Jaehyun, she added, take care of him. Don't let him walk away from you this time. And with that, she left. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. My breath caught. Divorce papers. Freedom, handed to me quietly, gracefully. I looked up. Jaehyun was staring at me, his eyes wide, his lips parted like he wanted to say something but couldn't. The boardroom felt like a graveyard after everyone left. The echo of Yujin's screams still lingered in the walls, but now there was only silence. I sat there staring at the divorce papers in my hand, the signature line already filled. Yura hadn't even hesitated. She knew me better than I knew myself. Yujin, Jaehyun's voice finally broke the silence. Soft, careful, like he was afraid I'd shatter. I looked up at him. He was standing a few feet away. She let you go, he said quietly. I exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and grief. No, she set me free. The words hung heavy between us. For a long time, neither of us moved. Then Jaehyun walked closer, his steps hesitant until he was right in front of me. His eyes flicked to the papers, then back to me. What now? He asked, barely above a whisper. I swallowed. My throat was dry, but the answer was clear. Now, we stop hiding. He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it, only the kind of laugh that came from exhaustion. You make it sound easy. It isn't. I stood, folding the papers carefully as though they were glass. Then I reached out and touched his face, my fingers brushing the line of his jaw. But I'm not walking away this time, Jaehyun, not from you. His eyes fluttered shut at the touch. A single tear slipped free. Do you know how long I've waited to hear that? His voice cracked, raw with emotion. I leaned closer. Too long. Then I pulled him into a kiss, I hope poured out every feelings I had in him. One that told him again how sorry I am and how much I love him. My hands pulled him closer as his fingers gripped the back of my shirt, as if he'd never let go. When we finally broke apart, he was breathing hard, tears clinging to his lashes. Don't make me regret this, he whispered. I pressed my forehead to his. I won't. A week later, and my world was finally taking shape. My father had put distance between himself and Sujin, throwing her to the mercy of the investigation. Yura had moved out, but not before hugging me tight, whispering, don't waste your second chance. And Jaehyun was here. Not as a guest. Not as a ghost from my past, but as part of my present. I found him in the studio in the evening, sitting in front of the canvas that had haunted him for months, the half-finished painting. He was holding a brush, staring at it like it held all the answers. Still can't finish it? I asked gently, stepping into the room. He turned, smiled faintly. Maybe I was waiting for the right inspiration. I walked over, resting a hand on his shoulder. Then paint. I'll sit with you. Then proceed to drag a stool close to him so I could sit with his back resting on my chest. He tilted to look at me for a long time, then reached back and pulled me in for a soft kiss. When I raised my brow to question his action, he just smiled, so bright I thought I would go blind, and then went back to painting. His strokes were sure, fluid, alive again. I slid an arm around his shoulders, pulling him against me. He leaned in, but kept on painting, and just like that, I knew. Whatever battles came next, we'd face them together. 'Cause there is no way in hell I am giving him up again. So when the opportunity presented itself, I told my parents about Jaehyun, and the reaction was exactly how I imagined it to go. My father suspended me from the CEO chair without a second thought, calling it necessary until you remember where your duty lies. My mother hadn't said a word to me since then. There was a time when those words and actions would have gutted me. Now, they don't. Because when I wake up in the mornings, it isn't to duty. It's to Jaehyun's arms wrapped tight around me, his breath warm against my neck, his messy curls brushing my cheek. He's dyed his hair again. Midnight blue at the top, soft waves spilling in every direction. It feels like I'm holding the boy I first fell in love with and the man he's become, all at once. We left, took a train, then a flight, then another. No boardrooms, no staged smiles, no ghosts of our past lurking in the corners. Just him and me. Wandering through galleries in Paris, eating too much street food in Tokyo, getting lost in the winding alleys of Florence. I watched him sketch on napkins, on scraps of paper, sometimes on his own skin, when inspiration struck. And every time I thought, This is what freedom looks like. I don't know what my future holds. Maybe I'll fight my way back into the company. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll start something new. But right now, none of it matters. Because at night, when I curl into bed beside him and his hand finds mine like it's the most natural thing in the world, I realize something simple. Something I'd been too blind to see before. This is enough. He is enough. Thanks for listening to the story Duty and Desire. If you enjoy this story, share your enthusiasm in the comments section, and don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification buttons so you don't miss any story uploads. See you in the next one.